Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe, that is Stephen Howson, and today we will be looking at how Mason Mount fits in at Manchester United. I realised, Steve, we didn't have your opinion of this signing on the channel. I need to know what Stephen Howson thinks about Mason Mount. It's crucial that I find out. So that's why we've got you in. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, I was meant to be with you, but I'm just sipping the scissor up, right?
Exactly.
While trying to deal with this cough. Look, my only drama with Mason Mount, he's never been on his ability. It's always just been about when it was 80 million, I didn't want to touch it. And 55 plus 5's not no one's calling it a bargain.
Yeah.
But how long did Declan Rice have left on his contract?
I think it was 2 years left on Rice's deal, so a year longer.
105 million for Declan Rice with what he's achieved in the game thus far. He's not a bargain, but I think I'm all right with it.
Yeah, well, let's get straight into that then. So let's compare. Havertz is another player sold by the same club in Chelsea. 65 million they've got off of Arsenal for him. United paying 55 plus an optional 5, and I think everyone just lumps that in. But if he's absolutely awful for United, he'll cost us 55, and if he's not, he'll cost us 60. Tonali, another one, 55 million from AC Milan to Newcastle. In that same bracket of price, where do you rank him against those other two players?
Couldn't say before the season, to be honest. You have to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what they've done in their careers so far. They're at a new club. Some of them are going to play under a new system. They're all playing under new managers. The prices paid are irrelevant. If you'd asked me at the start of the season, what do you think of United signings? I'd have been like, well, Eriksen's an incredible signing. We've overpaid for Casemiro. We've overpaid for Anthony. I think come the end of the season, no one's talking about overpaying for Casemiro, I don't think. So We're still talking about overpaying for Anthony. But I think you have to see the context of how the season pans out. Like when Real Madrid paid 80 million for Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't actually think anyone at the time was going, this is a ridiculous price for him. But it probably was. I don't think when they look back on what they got out of him, anyone gives a flying fuck about the price.
No. And in contrast, and this isn't obviously meant to be a dig at Tchouaméni, but you mentioned Real Madrid there. They've paid 100 million euros for Tchouaméni. And I know he's been good and he gets games, but he's not, been their best player. He doesn't start often, and he'll often miss a big game. He's only a year younger than Mason Mount. Like, I know he's seen as this really young sort of up and coming player. He's 23 and Mount's 24. So
I'll throw another name at you.
Go on.
Eden Hazard.
Yeah, what was that? 115 million euros. And he was in the last year of his deal as well.
Is he in Saudi yet? Is he in Saudi yet? He's booking his ticket, isn't he?
Yeah, insane. You mentioned Eriksen before, and I want to go into some of the sort of the stats and the details of this. But just before we get into the numbers, do you see Eriksen's spot alongside Casemiro behind Bruno Fernandes? Do you see that being where, first of all, where Mount plays, and do you think he will play over Eriksen? Do you think he'll be the new first choice in that spot?
Probably. Yeah, probably. I think United's formation will have to evolve a little bit to accommodate him. I think you're going to see Casemiro played on his own in a single pivot a little bit more, or you will see Bruno occupying the deeper role as we've seen him do to pretty good effect last season. What it might mean is that United have a way more fluid midfield three. In some games, the same three might look like a 2 and a 1. It might look like a 1 and a 2. It might look like a dogleg 3 at times. I think it'll be way more flexible, depending on who we're playing and what their strengths and weaknesses are. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have the players that we've got. I'd still want someone else that could just shuttle in when Casemiro isn't available, though, because I think that's the weakness in this midfield at the moment. We've got players who can play. We've got great technical footballers in Eriksen, in Mason Mount, in Bruno. What we don't have is someone who can do that dirty work that Casemiro does. So finding the right person that can come in, because like 5 into 3 doesn't really go. Although when you look at all of our rivals, they've all got similar sort of numbers going for similar sort of numbers. So
yeah,
finding the right personality with the right sort of temperament, with the right skill set, that's probably going to be having to sit on the bench or play midweek games when when Casemiro's needing a rest. That's going to be hard work finding, but I think that's a crucial signing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that might be next on the list if a striker's difficult to come by. I just want to go through a couple of stats on Mount, because I know that you haven't said this, but just a lot of people kind of think, well, he can't play the Eriksen role because he doesn't, sit deep enough. He doesn't track back. He doesn't do the defensive work that sort of
Eriksen doesn't really track back either.
Well, that's the thing. So just looking at sort of percentiles, and we can get the graphic up on the screen as well. In terms of attacking, Mount is sort of, well ahead of Eriksen in terms of his output for scoring goals. Eriksen ahead in terms of assists. But if you look at defending, I'm not stating that Mount is an elite defender by any means, but in comparison to Eriksen, so just tackles per 90, Mount, compared to other midfielders, is in the 46th percentile. Eriksen is in the 2nd percentile. Just does not tackle whatsoever. Tackles in the midfield, third, Mount 51, Eriksen 1st percentile. And I think crucially as well, when you think about the high pressing style of Ten Hag, what he wants from a midfielder, tackles in the attacking third, Mason Mount is in the 98th percentile. He's one of the best in Europe at winning the ball back high up the pitch, and Eriksen only in the 29th. Maybe that's because he's playing a bit deeper, but you look at his other tackling stats, Eriksen just doesn't really like tackling. So when you look at the raw defensive numbers, Mount is a much more willing defender, much more capable defender than Eriksen is. So I think he definitely can play that role next to Casemiro, don't you?
I think he could, but I also think that a lot of his numbers come from him being higher up and being like that first line of defence rather than the second line of defence. I think what's more likely is that I think of the 3 likely options that we just copy-paste Mason Mount into where Eriksen was, I think that's the least likely thing that we'll see. I think it's more likely you will see Bruno occupy the right and Mason Mount occupy the left with Casemiro sitting in between as a single pivot, or you will see Bruno move back to that line and Mount take Bruno's current spot, because I think Bruno's got the energy, the work rate, the attitude, the desire, and actually he's shown that he's got that sort of range. I mean, you often see Bruno making tackles at fullback. I think that's a trait of someone that you might want to put in a 6, or even as a deep lying number 6, and then allow him to bomb forward later on. I think that's the most likely scenario out of the 3, only just over the single pivot. But again, it's flexibility is what we get here. Mason Mount can play anywhere in a forward sense. I think we haven't seen him play in a deeper role. That's not to say that he couldn't play in that deeper role. We just haven't really seen. We have seen bits of it, but we haven't seen lots of it. No. And then I think against, away at Anfield, away at City, you might only see one of Bruno or Mount, or you might see Bruno off the right with Mount playing down the centre, and maybe 2 more combative midfielders. So what we've got is flexibility in many different shapes, with quality. Last season, Chelsea fell off a cliff. Mount had a bit of an injury. He didn't really have a good season in the slightest. But when you look at what he's done prior to that, there is a good player there. And, I'm not sitting here saying, he's £80 million midfielder or he's the best midfielder in the league. He's not. He's a good player, though. And that's all I think that Arsenal have got in Declan Rice. He's a good player. You pay 50, 60 million for him, you're pretty happy. But 100 million, I think they've had the pants pulled down.
It's a lot of money. Just another thing with Mount, and it's weird because I know he hasn't won a lot of trophies, but he has won a Champions League, and Ten Hag spoke a lot about bringing in winners and the mentality of the likes of Casemiro and Varane, and he's obviously not in that stratosphere in terms of trophies won, but having won a Champions League, do you think that brings something to the squad as well? Because, Rashford, Bruno, Anthony, Martial if he's still there, Luke Shaw, a lot of these players have never won a trophy of that magnitude. Like, do you think he brings something with him with that kind of winning mentality, or do you think, it's only one trophy, it's not really enough?
He's got experience of winning things. You can't say that offers nothing. Yeah. I think what's more important with Mount is that all the talk you ever hear of him is that he's a professional. Everything he does, he's intelligent and he's a professional and he's a hard worker. And I think that, coupled with the things that we actually see on the pitch, I think is a good package. I don't think it was the priority signing. Maybe it got done first because it was the one that we could do first. Yeah. Maybe the other ones require longer negotiation. I don't think United prioritised signing Mount ahead of a striker, for example. Maybe it's just easier communication. We've said this all along. there's probably a fire sale about to happen at Chelsea. I don't think any of us assumed that they would just like wholesale half of the club towards Saudi Arabia, but we knew that there'd be some sort of a fire sale happening. So Chelsea are going to be a willing seller of players. So you go to Chelsea, you're going to get some players out of them. There'll be some bargains to be had. I don't necessarily think Mason Mount is a bargain at the price that we've paid, but there will be some bargains to be had for some players. And I think you could do worse than adding a bit of depth to United's squad by maybe going back to Chelsea and seeing what else they got in the £5 bin. So what's in that?
There's got to be something really cheap going on. Someone you forgot about. I bet like Paulo Ferreira
Loftus Cheek or something.
Yeah, like a Loftus Cheek, like Basingwa's still there. Yeah, we'll have him for a year. Like just one of those players that you forgot was there and they forgot was there, just hiding under the stairs. Just on the sort of the manager and how he fits in at United, because Ten Hag has spoken, or not even spoken, but there's been these rumours of these tenets and these rules and these, Sky Sports yesterday was saying that he'd brought in these 83 principles about what to do with and without the ball. And apparently Mason Mount ticks all the core traits and he's seen as being a comfortable creator. Sky also said that Mount was sort of wowed by Ten Hag's level of detail in Mount's game and how much he appreciated it. Do you think that the fact that it seems like it is a Ten Hag signing, like you said, maybe it wasn't the priority, but it was the one we could get done first. But do you think he really sort of fits that mould off the ball? Because it's all we've seen is a lot of on the ball stuff, but do you think he can kind of come in and do what's needed off the ball?
Yeah, definitely. And more so in the advanced position. Like I said, I don't necessarily think he'll be in the deeper role. And that's why I think you might see an evolution of United's formation, at least this season. Unless it is the switch of Bruno, and maybe that was why he started Bruno deeper a couple of times last season. Yeah. Because Bruno's such an integral part of the team. Why would you move him for essentially nothing last season? Yeah. So I think you will see an evolution of United, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the striker remains the priority. I just think we're struggling to get it done, and maybe we're waiting for an ownership change to sort of go absolutely mental on deadline day. I think it's going to be a wild transfer window, and not necessarily the best for preparation, but hopefully it's one that sees the back of the Glazers and the club can move on in a post-Glazer era.
Just on the slight tweaks in formation and style, we're seemingly looking at Onana, who's obviously a very modern, ball at the feet kind of goalkeeper. We're looking at potentially a midfield with just one defensive midfielder in there with Casemiro. We've seen, Man City I know they put Stones in there and they work things around to fill those gaps, but they play sort of Rodri and that's kind of it as a defensive player. You look at Real Madrid over the last sort of decade, they play Casemiro with a Modric and a Kroos next to him. Do you think that we're sort of inching towards this real high pressure, high possession style football that we're seeing other teams play, or do you think this is going to sort of evolve a different way?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. Ronaldo mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I hadn't thought about it. And when I did think about it, it made perfect sense. And then it didn't materialise. And that was not Mason Mount, sorry, it was Declan Rice to City. And you go, why would City want Declan Rice? He's not going to replace Rodri. He doesn't do what Gundogan's just done. And Ronaldo went, he's going to do what Stones has just been doing. And you go, oh yeah. Oh yeah, in a big way. So City might have just pumped the numbers up for Arsenal to sign him. Or they might be going back in the market for somebody themselves. It's not like they're afraid of signing players. I have no idea where Guardiola's going to play once Stones moves back, if Stones moves back. But I think the way City have done it, I can see them signing an actual midfielder to play that role and just change their formation. Entirely change what their formation is to accommodate that. Basically play, 3 wide centre halves, 2 sixes, and do what the fuck you want with the other 5. Whether United do that or others are capable of doing that, I don't think anyone else has got the system as nailed as what Pep's got. Or the ability and belief of the players when you introduce something mental to them that they'll do it or buy it as well as City players can and do. I think United will go to to that new shape, whether it's a 5 at the back or a 6 at the back, it might take a few years to adapt. It might take a few years to get to the final form. We can only look at what he did at Ajax and presume going forward. But the game's changing. You know, I think this is one of the James Bond films. You're solving an algorithm as it's fighting back. And that's what football is at the moment. You're trying to come up with new tactics to deal with what Pep's doing, but what's De Zerbi doing? What's Arteta doing? You know, what these guys doing over here? You have to try and figure out all of those and expose the weaknesses of what your current system is while you're figuring out what the weaknesses of those are. And then you get yours exposed, you have to figure those out. So it's a constant battle. You know, we've seen 4-4-2 go from being outdated to an excellent formation that's going to work on counter-attacking football and be very, very effective. And you see Atletico Madrid and Leicester City be unfancied within their leagues and successful within their leagues by using a so-called outdated, unfancied formation. You've seen the evolution of 4-3-3. You've seen this sort of new shift a little bit to a back three. And all it is just trying to find overloads in different areas of the pitch. That's all it is. Because that's what football is currently about, control and overload. Where do you control? Where do you overload? And that's how people are exploiting stuff. And then if you've got magicians and you know, world-class talent in other areas, they'll beat their people 1v1 and they'll create opportunities and score you goals. So will United move to this high-press dominant force in the yes, because I think Ten Hag clearly is of that school. He's obviously worked with Pep Guardiola at Bayern Munich. He's from the Ajax school himself. He's going to be... He's as much from the tree of Johan Cruyff as Guardiola is himself. That doesn't mean that you'll see a carbon copy. You'll see a Dutch interpretation of a Spanish philosophy, you know, which is actually a Dutch philosophy. So it'll be interesting to see which shape he puts on it. And if he's influenced by the history and heritage of Manchester United at all in terms of like wingers that want to go for it and actually quick, aggressive counter-attacking football. I don't know if you could come to Manchester United and not be influenced by that. So it'll be really interesting. And obviously he's been out for lunch with Fergie. I don't know if Fergie's just sitting there and just going, fucking Wenger's, mate. Like, I have no idea. But it'd be interesting to see if he does. Because I think that might be the most effective blend is what we saw in 2008. I'd love to see us go back to that. I think that was as close to my favourite ideal of how modern football can be interpreted. The team that played out from the back, that pressed from the front, that dominated the ball and devastated you on the counter-attack. I think that was the most entertaining football that I think you should expect from a modern team.
Yeah, what more can you ask for? And just finally then, do you, like, pretty simple really, do you think Mason Mount will be a good signing for United? Do you like the signing?
Yeah. Yeah, we've had pretty much decent success when we buy players in their mid-20s from other Premier League teams. I would say that is the tree that we get the most fruit from in transfers. I'd love to see the data on that, but I reckon that's probably one of the most fruitful.
It's a relatively successful furrow to plough, isn't it? So yeah, fair enough. Right, that's going to be all. Thank you very much for joining us today, despite your illness, despite you sipping on cough medicine throughout. I very much enjoyed that. Let us know your thoughts at home. Get your comments in and hit subscribe as well. And hit the notification bell, especially during the transfer window. We will be live every time there's breaking news. So if you want to see it first, hit that notification bell. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Steve, for coming on. And we'll see you in a bit.